Everyone, welcome to another episode of the Rhino Show podcast. Oh my goodness. My next guest is somebody that I absolutely love. I've followed her career for many, many years since I'm not dating her at all because she looks great. But since listen to music, the cassettes, all these different things when, no digital was there. It was just good old-fashioned music and street. LeLee Lyons is a Bronx, New York native who currently resides in Atlanta, Georgia. As a young girl and mother of two by the age of 17, LeLee was determined to change the way people looked at her. Feeling like a failure and disappointment to her mother, she wanted to do something in her life that would make everybody forget about her failures, is what LeLee said, and that she did. In 1992, LeLee became the visionary behind the two-time Grammy-nominated supergroup we know today as Sisters with Voices, SWV, along with her group members Cheryl, Coko, Gamble, and Tamara George. LeLee's my favorite. No disrespect to the other two girls, but LeLee's always been my favorite. The trio went on to sell over 25 million records to date with songs like Weak, Right Here, I'm So Into You, to name a few. SWV also had their fair share of television success with two reality-based TV shows, SWV Reunited, and most recently Ladies Night with the Queens of Rap Music, Salt and Pepper. But with all the accomplishments, notoriety, and monetary blessings achieved in the entertainment industry, LeLee still felt empty and unfulfilled. After realizing the real blessing would be in blessing others through her life experiences and pain, LeLee would dedicate her life bringing awareness to teen pregnancy prevention, domestic violence, and child sexual abuse, all of which she experienced as a young girl, and we will talk about today. Currently, LeLee continues to travel the world with SWV, became a first-time author of her first book, I Regret the Day I Lost My Virginity. That is so damn raw. We'll talk more about that too. A memoir, a book that will encourage and inspire women and young girls all over the world to be your best you, no matter what your past says. Picking up the pen to write about the things that she wanted to forget was one of the hardest things for her, is what LeLee said. Being no stranger to keeping it real, there is nothing watered down about her memoir. LeLee put herself out there to be judged in pure courageous fashion, and she doesn't regret it one bit. As CEO of her own production company, Hershey Entertainment, where she's currently developing and creating shows for major television networks, working on a podcast, and aspire to take a stab at movies and film. She wants to do it all, says LeLee. I'm all about creating opportunities that the industry just won't give you. I feel like I'm in the best space of my life and plan to take full advantage of it. Being in an industry where they try to put an expiration date on you, she wants to change the narrative. She wants to encourage women like herself to continue the dream, no matter what anyone says. If the better you comes in your 40s, 50s, 60s, or hell 70s, go for it. LeLee, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about tonight.
And you know what's funny is that sometimes I abbreviate the bios, but in doing my digital deep dive on you, you're so versatile. Every talk show I've watched about you, or any TV radio show, everybody brings up that you love to cuss and you love to curse, and so they always kind of draw fun to the fact that, they're like, okay, LeLee, let's try to keep it PG, and you're like, listen, I don't mean anything wrong by it. That's just who I am. So,
right, okay, we'll be PG today.
You're absolutely incredible. What I would like to say first off is, my goodness, you've been through so much, you've seen so much. You've been through good, you've been through bad. What about, now sitting where you are in 2020, even when you got into the industry, there's no internet, there's no Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all these things, and you hear all these stories about people who really try to make it in the business, running tapes and demos by foot to a record company, doing things really the hard way. What do you think, sitting in 2020 with kids now saying, hey, I want to be a YouTube star, as opposed to being like a doctor or a lawyer or, opening a business? What would you tell them? Because I see on your social media, a lot of your posts, you draw light to the fact that, hey, don't let fame get to your head, because it will chew you up, spit you out as quick as it brought you in, and they will replace you with the next person in 2 seconds. So somebody who's saying, my God, I love LeLee, I love everything she's done in her career, maybe I would like to do it, or maybe I don't, what would you say to them?
Well, one thing I don't want to do is discourage them from the dream. I've had a desire to do entertainment, so I know there's so many young girls and men and young boys who aspire to do what I've been so blessed to do. But let's just be real. We want to be what we see the most of. You know, those conversations are not taking place anymore. People are not talking about college anymore in the home. They're not talking about, you know, being a doctor, being a lawyer. Those conversations are a thing of the past now. You know, the only young people I know, and this is based on people that I have relationships with, are people who the only time they talk about education and being a doctor and being a lawyer is if you grew up with a family of doctors and lawyers, and as well as educators. So right now we've got this crazy thing called the internet, which is a blessing and a curse.
Absolutely.
People are exposed. These young kids are exposed to things that we don't discuss in our homes.
Absolutely.
So the internet is literally raising a lot of our children.
But it's interesting, you know, because people look at, some people kind of go on the one side of the internet is that the internet's bad and, you know, oh my goodness. And I always say, if you hand a tool to a good human or a bad human, it's still the same tool. It's how we use the tool that really changes the context in which we use it. That being said, I'm a glass half full always kind of person. That's my spirit. So I think about things like, I said, hey, I want to talk to LeLee. I want to bring LeLee on the show. Man, I could just message LeLee. I mean, think back in the day. You couldn't just message people. You couldn't. You would have to go through gatekeepers. You couldn't even get to that person. You got to go through managers. 100%. Right? Yeah. And now it's like you hop on Instagram, and you know, a lot of people do have handlers that do their social media and whatnot, but you can just have direct access, right? And that's why even when I messaged you, I said, hey, LeLee and team, because I don't know if I'm talking to you or maybe I'm talking to one of your team members. I don't know, right? But then the way you reply back, you're like, hey. I'm like, oh, it's her. And you're very casual with how everything is, right? So how have you maintained this certain, you know, going through good, going through bad? You have this, I have never met you in person. This is the first time I've even been talking to you verbally. But you maintain this very humble, very just, man, I mean, you're just somebody who seems like you could kick it on the couch, in the car, walking down the block, just very chill, you know, very calm, you know. Even when we were trying to book this interview, you said, I don't know who the heck booked for 8 a.m. But I'm an industry girl, and that is not happening here. And the way you said it, though, was so like, listen here, brother, I don't know who you talk to. And you start naming names. I'm like, I don't know who the heck that is. And you're so casual about it. So is this something that from, you know, in your days of SWV all the way to now, is this something that, you know, LeLee's learned a lot through the path? Has your ego changed over the course of your career and age, or has this always been kind of you?
This has always been me. I have always been the girl from the Bronx. And sometimes, believe it or not, it get me in a lot of trouble because that's where a lot of my, you know, all of this, you know, the door knocking earrings. And my sister always told me, you too old to be wearing that. No, this is where I'm from. I'm from the culture of hip hop, where hip hop was originated in the Bronx, New York. So I still have a lot of that,
yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
But I definitely have been blessed, like I said earlier, to see both sides of the spectrum. I grew up poor. Yeah. You know, I grew up wanting things. I grew up not having a lot, so I can appreciate the little things that I have. So God has blessed me tremendously to be in an industry that a lot of people probably have spent a lifetime trying to get in but won't. So I had an opportunity to make some money and buy me some nice things, and I'm just blessed. So my friends, I'm still friends with the friends that I had before I became LeLee. Yeah. You know, so it's so funny because when I call my friends, I'm like, hey, y'all, I'm coming to New York. And one of my friends like, well, let me tell you, you know, I don't have no, and sometimes that offends me because I'm like, dude, don't act like we ain't sleeping cots. You know what I'm saying? Don't act like we don't do the couch. I'm the same girl.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like if you got a chair that if I can do like this, I can get some sleep. You know what I mean? So I'm just very personable. Like I know what it's like to have. I know what it's like not to have, and I'm not easily impressed.
Yeah.
I'm not easily impressed. Like, I've been able to see a lot of, and in this industry, you know, it's levels to this stuff. You know, my friends think I got something. I'm like, well, I ain't got nothing compared to what they got. You know, but one thing I realized, it doesn't matter what you have and how much of it you have. It doesn't give you the peace. You can't buy peace.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes. You know what I mean? You can't buy that peace that everybody in this industry so desperately wants, but it's so hard to find.
People have that shiny object syndrome, you know, and even when they talk about famous people, so many people they talk, you know, when they look at a famous person, it's interesting, you know, they get very hopped up over it, right? And I always believed, you know, we're all just as temporary as the next person. So whether I see Barack Obama or LeLee or some homeless guy on the street that's just trying to make his or her way, to me it never, even since I was a kid, it never mattered. I'm a big football dude. I used to play football. I met so many different people, and at the end of the day, I said, I seen that guy come out of the toilet. He went and had to go to the washroom just like every next person. Okay.
Yes.
Now, what I'm fascinated over, LeLee, and our whole show is wrapped around it, is curiosity. Because I wonder, why does somebody get to this spot in life and others don't get to that spot in life? And what's really interesting is when we deconstruct their journeys and paths, it's often work ethic. It's often the decisions in which they made along the journey. So for you, I know you probably made every mistake in the book. You've had a lot of losses in the book, but you've also had a lot of wins in the book. My question to you is, looking back, and I know it's hindsight, because when you're living through hell at the time, if you got asked this question, you'd be like, no, I don't want to be in hell. I would like to be out of hell. Right? So I'm giving context to the question, but I look at it and I'm like, would you say your losses mean more to you as LeLee, as LeAnne, as a human being, or your wins?
Definitely my losses. My losses, definitely, because in order for you to know good, you have to do bad. In order for you to know how to win, you have to lose. And vice versa. So it all depends on how you learn those particular lessons. You know what I mean? Like, I am to the point now at 47 years old. I've been on this journey for almost 30 years now. And even though I was in a very successful group, I still felt like a loser. I didn't feel successful, and I was in the meat of it all. And I still did not feel like a winner. Now,
why is that? Is that, do you think it was a little bit of imposter syndrome where you felt like, man, I don't even belong here? And maybe that could project into your self-respect for yourself, like almost your value internally for yourself? Or is it just upbringing, all the above? You know what I mean?
You know what it was? When I got into this industry, like I said, it's levels to this stuff. So once you get inside of it, you have people that treat you like you're not exciting to them. You know, we may be sitting next to each other, but you're not me. I'm still bigger than you. I'm still more popular than you.
Yes.
Those egos run rapid in this business.
Got it.
You know what I mean? So I think as a young girl, I allowed people to control my thought patterns. Yes. I allowed people to sow conversations in me that I started to believe, even as I felt like a failure.
Got it.
You know, like when I try a new task or try something new, and I hear those voices in my head like, oh, you ain't nothing, you know, you're a failure, you know, but I turned that around. And I think a lot of us need to learn how to do this. I am so excited. This is so crazy, but I get excited when people pray against me, because I'm the type of girl, I can show you better than I can tell you. And I did that by having a vision to start a girl group. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But then I didn't know, once God blessed me with this thing, because he did bless me with that. I said, God, please let me be in this industry. Let me just have the gift of song, and let me enjoy. Let me be on stage. Let me be famous. He gave me that. But then once I was that, I still was empty.
Interesting.
I still felt like nothing. I still felt like wow, I still got to do more climbing. Like, you mean, God, this is not it. You got to take me up. It's levels to this too.
Well, it's interesting too, because when people talk about climbing, you can always climb the wrong mountain too. Doesn't mean one mountain is worse than the other, right? This is things that go through my mind, because for me, I'm fascinated with how people's minds work. You know, I love psychology. You know, I'm a business owner, but I started this podcast because I said, man, I'm just so damn curious. You know, I like to deconstruct and figure out what makes people tick. And it's interesting because when people sit down a lot of the time, they say, hey, Ryan, I don't know the right questions to ask. Or if I'm dealing with somebody that's maybe more of an introvert, where you just said, hey, I can show much better than I can verbalize my thoughts, right? Yeah. There's ways to work around that and try to figure out, well, what does go in the mind? So you seem like you're kind of a captain sitting in a cockpit, and you're kind of a little quiet, but your mind is just... You're checking the flight patterns. You're checking the weather. You're checking, you know, is the passengers okay? How's the food? Lemon pepper wings or something, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, you know, so for you, you're in the group. You know, you're at the height of your success, quote unquote, success at that time, and you're still feeling extremely empty. People listening to that, I think it's such a big point of you know, to stop and bring context to, because so many people say, well, I want what LeLee has, or I want what LeLee had. And then they get there and maybe they feel like you did, where they're like, oh, this was not how I thought this was going to feel. You know, it's almost like, well, I want a lot of money. And then you get a lot of money and you're like, oh, I still feel empty. And people react two ways to that. One, unfortunately, some people go and they take their own life. I mean, they go all the way to the right and they lose it completely.
I was there. There.
Right?
I was so there. And I think it's just, let's just say this. When you are in something, you're married, right?
I'm married, yeah.
You're married, or let's just say you got married at 20 years old, and now you're probably 50 years old. That's all you know is that woman.
Yeah.
You've given so much to this woman. You've sacrificed so much for this woman. Even if you admit that you have to give up a little bit of who you are to comfort her and your family, and then she just decides to do her own thing. So everything that you built, not even for you built everything for your family. And they could and one person. Now think about the process of everything it took for you to get to this point. And that one person can make a decision to say, well, I don't want none of this anymore. It's devastating. It's devastating. And that's the space that I was in. All I knew was SWV. All I knew was going on stage since I was like 18 years old. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything else to depend on. So when that was taken away from me in 1998, I just felt lost. I felt so lost. And I'm like questioning myself, well, how could I go from everybody loving me to no one gives a damn now? You know what I mean? Like, how does that happen?
Yes.
You know what I mean? How does that happen? You know, I was just doing this. I was just doing that. Everything was good. You know, people would do nice things for me, and I would say thank you. You know, I love the experience of a relationship and just hugging on people and seeing the fans. And one person can make a decision and take that all away from me. After all I've sacrificed, I sacrificed my kids, you know, being there for my kids. I was a Western Union mom. You know, I lost a lot of years with my children, you know, and then one person, a record company could just say, hey, we don't want to go this route anymore. We don't care what you do. We gonna go this route. Devastated. Devastated.
Yes.
They controlled my thoughts. They controlled everything that I was. I didn't even know myself. And I didn't care to find out who I was. I didn't care, because all I cared about is who people knew. is LeLee. You know what I mean? That's all I cared about is, wow, I can't give them LeLee? Then I might as well just end it all.
Yes.
If I can't be who they need me to be for them, why am I here? And that's when the whole suicide thoughts start coming in my head. And I was going to commit.
How old were you then, LeLee, roughly?
I was about, I think I was probably 20, 21.
Oh, just a young baby. A young baby. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Because so in the prime of SWV, when you were performing and doing all that, how old would have you been? Like 18 till, I mean, you were young.
I was 18. Now, this happened in 98. So,
so 22 years ago.
I was definitely in my 20s.
Yeah, I see about 25.
Yeah, around there. And I had no money. I lost everything.
Yes.
I lost everything. And what I didn't lose, I gave back.
Yes.
I had a car, a nice truck. This is when the Ford Expeditions first came out. I had a brand new Ford Expedition. I got sick of hiding that damn truck to the point where I would go to every friend's house who had a garage and hide the truck in their garage. So one day I just got so tired. I got tired of hiding and tired of fighting, and I knew I didn't have the money to pay this car. I know I was driving with no insurance. It was just bad. Yeah. So I drove up to the Ford dealership and I said to them, I came to give you back what belongs to you.
Yes.
When I left there, we didn't have Uber at the time. I just started walking, but there was a freeness that came off my back. I'm telling you, it was so much weight off my shoulders. And I said to myself, I said, you know what? If God blessed me with this the first time, he's definitely going to do it again.
100%.
100%. And I stood on that. Yes. I stood on that.
So everybody, it's interesting because you took your identity and you based your identity on something that really wasn't foundational. There was nothing, that thing was not built on concrete. It was built on sticks that when the wind comes, they just blow anyway, right?
Exactly.
And that's a slippery game. That's a slippery game to play because, you know, and I always say, and we talk about obviously in 2020, especially with, you know, what's happening in the States. I'm in Canada. It's a little different, but racism is everywhere. I mean, we're battling.
Love Canada.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Canada.
Canada's a beautiful country, you know. It's funny because
I love it.
Back in the day after high school, I played football, a scholarship. I went down to Los Angeles. Oh my goodness, it was such a culture shock for me because because you go down to a place like that. And, you know, I'll never forget. I mean, I got to room and board. It was like a co-op program. So I basically lived with a teammate's parents. They lived in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is not realistic to the world, right?
Right.
And then you go drive a few blocks and then maybe you're in Compton or something. And I'm like, oh my God. But it really gave me a taste of the racial divide in the States and in the world, because in Canada, not to say that it's better, but it's more quieter. You don't get you're not having, you know, police officers pull people over and shoot them and all these things in this capacity. But it's silent. But in the States, what you see is just all hell breaking loose to some degree, right? Do you think for you, when we go back into that, because I'm leading to the one word, and that's always ownership. You know, ownership over yourself, ownership over your business, ownership over your money, your family, your home, your car, just straight up ownership. Because to me, ownership gives you a certain power and choice and option. Love options. Love me some options. You give me. I don't like one option. I like a couple options.
Oh, you sound like me. You sound like me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Eggs should not go all in the same basket, in my opinion. Humbly and graciously.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So for you now, you're 25 years old. You're in SWV. Your whole identity is based on that. You grew up, you know, life of craziness before that. Got a lot of success. Gets ripped away. Oh my God, very traumatic. How do you go back and say to yourself, all that experience I got, And now you're using that experience to push forward into everybody else in the new generation coming up. But what would you tell yourself now, knowing what you know now, back then? You know, because you get to the point where you say, my life is worthless because somebody else was depositing into the checking account that I didn't even own.
Ooh.
Right? You know what I'm saying?
Ooh.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So now, LeLee deconstructs back to 25 years old, comes all the way back to 47. How does that look now? Just to give everybody who's listening, you know, an insight into the path, you know, into the journey, which is the best part.
Well, what I would tell a young LeLee, I would tell myself to be patient, to love yourself and understand who you are. See, that was never implemented into me. I didn't know how to love myself, even as and this kind of goes back to why I wrote the book in the first place. I regret the day I lost my virginity. You are not your past. Because even throughout my successes, I still, like I told you, I felt like a failure. I felt like people had information on me that held me in bondage. You know what I mean? When I was a young girl, I lost my virginity at 13. If I saw this guy today, I could not tell you who he was. I know who he is, but I don't know if he smacked me in the head, I wouldn't even know who. I'd be like, who? And if he said his name, I'd be like, oh my God, you know, I'd be excited. But, you know, that was supposed to be a great experience for me. And it really wasn't. It really wasn't. So even throughout my teen years, I always felt like I was the property of some dude.
Interesting.
Some dude that I barely knew. I always felt like I didn't want to be that girl that wasn't having sex because she wasn't popular. Guys didn't like her. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I thought maybe if I become what the guys like, then, you know, they will like me. Like I'll be the cool chick on the block. Yes. But like I tell my nieces, I didn't know back then that it's cool to be square.
Yes.
It's cool to be popular, but be popular for the right things.
100%.
100%. Absolutely. So I had to grow up. I had to grow up and figure things out. I had to cry a lot. I had to tap into my inner me and ask myself, why didn't I love myself? Why was my self-esteem so low? I had to ask myself these questions. Nobody on this planet can answer those questions for me. You know, and I had to gain my power back. I had to take my power back.
It's interesting because it goes back to the days of Adam and Eve. I mean, everybody knows if the cookie jar is open and everybody's just putting their hand in the cookie jar and the cookies are flying out, nobody wants those cookies. I want the cookie jar that's all in that safe. And I'm like, why has it got that special cover on it? I mean, I'm looking at that cookie jar and I will refuse to eat any cookies forever until I get that one cookie. God. Because
and to this day, I wish I was that brand new pack of cookies.
Yes.
I wish.
Poor LeLee. Give the girl some cookies. Get some cookies for her.
I was that brand new, unopened, unused pack of Oreo cookies, chocolate chip cookies. That's that. But you can't get those times back.
Well, LeLee, in the marketing community, we call this a rebrand. So you get the option to rebrand yourself. You get to do the different colors, the different logo.
Well, I don't know if you can rebrand that.
It depends on which doctor you ask.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Man. No.
You are absolutely right. You can even rebrand that. Ain't that something?
Yeah. It's 2020. I mean, I in my mind, I'm like, I think almost anything's possible nowadays. It's some weird stuff going on.
Yes. Right? You're right.
So when you go back, you say, okay, I thought this was the right thing to do. I think about this all the time because, you know, my son is 3.5, Dejan, and my daughter Talia is 16 months old. And, you know, it's so funny when you're a man and any guy listening to podcasts is a father, the first thing you think about when you find out that you're having a baby who's a girl, you start thinking about how you treated every single woman in your life, every single girl. And then you start getting, and then I start getting scenes of Will Smith and Martin Lawrence and Bad Boys 2 when they're opening the door and this guy's trying to come and date the girl. And then I'm thinking, am I answering the door in my boxers with a gun or some sort of knife? Like, what is happening here, you know? And you start getting anxiety. For me, I get this anxiety thinking about it. My daughter's going to date somebody? Who the heck is... Already I don't like the person, and she's only 16 months. I mean, she's not dating till she's 47. But that's another story.
Throughout her process, you're going to always think that.
Oh,
because you're gonna always stay dad. You're gonna your thoughts are gonna be the same. She's the one that's gonna grow. You're gonna see her. You know, she's gonna have boobs. She's gonna have legs. You're gonna be like, oh my god.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Just the other. I'm changing her diaper. Actually, earlier today, and I said to my wife, her feet are growing way too quick. I don't want this girl to grow too quick. I'm already starting. I'm like, you're growing way too quick, right?
Oh yeah.
So you come back, you say, hey, I am on the precipice of thinking, hey, my life doesn't matter. I maybe want to end it. And then what changes in that to say, I'm going to keep forging through. My life on paper in terms of material is not what it was. I'm going to have to get over the fact that I'm not SWV at this moment. Nobody really cares. In general, I was used as a commodity, you know. The commodity stopped and everything else stopped. So then basically now you're saying, who the hell am I? And where am I going from this point on? What does that look like?
You know what? The night actually that I was gonna commit suicide, I was staying at the Marriott Hotel in Times Square. And I'm scared of heights. I am so afraid of heights.
You're a funny girl. You are a funny woman. You sleep till 12. You take naps. You're scared of heights. You, my friend, are a funny person.
It is actually. Please remind me to tell you the story about why I like to enjoy sleeping. It all stems from my childhood.
Okay.
But I was just done. I was done with life. I was done with people. I was done with myself. I was just in this dark place that I could not find my way out of. And I didn't have any more money to pay for this room. And I was heavy. I was very heavy. So I said, before I die, I'm going to call two of my sisters and just tell them to just take care of my kids. Tell my kids I love them. I can't do this anymore. They're better off without me here. Because right now I can't give them anything. Nothing. I'm no good for anybody, not even myself. So one of my sisters I called, she didn't answer the phone, and then I called my other sister. And the crazy thing is, we never said anything. It was just complete silence. And I just started crying, and she started crying, and she was like, just come home. Just come home. Never said nothing. I never told her what I was going to do. A lot of my hurt and my pain, I kept away from my family, but she knew, she connected with my spirit some kind of way. And I was just crying, like I was in front of the hotel door, just crying. And the lady had to help me up, and she's like, "You okay?" And I just fell, just fell completely out. And she just so happened to let me, it was a housekeeper. She let me, I said, please just let me go grab my things. So I went inside the room, and I just went in the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror and just started boo-hoo crying and thinking about the selfish thing that I was about to do. Like, how dare you take a life that was not given to you? I dealt with when I tell you I was a crazy woman in there, I was like punching myself in the face and the head, and I cursed myself out. But I tell you one thing, the next day, I was so refreshed. It was almost like I had like this glow on me. And I chose life over death. I said, God, whatever you have in your plan for my life, let's do it. Let's go. You know, I'm willing. At that particular moment, I was just willing to start over again. And I think for a lot of people, that's the hardest thing to do, is to not only to start over, but for people to see you start over. Especially if they know where you've been. Oh my God, it's the most embarrassing thing ever. So my sister told me to come.